You guys really don't know when it's good or bad when it comes right down to it. You really don't know because you don't know what we're trying to do. You guys don't look at the films. You don't know what happened. You really don't know. You think you know, but you don't know, and you never will.
To come home because I have a very special love.
The media public doesn't know. You guys don't know. Sometimes it won't. I can tell you it won't be good, and you'll see it won't be good. Sometimes you'll think it's good, and it isn't any good. Sometimes you'll think it's bad, and it was pretty darn good. Sometimes you'll think it's bad, and it was bad. But basically, you really don't know.
Welcome back to the Beta Boys Weekly Podcast. We are back on the Packers Corner. Pretty exciting one here, guys. Happy to be joined by you guys after another victory over the Vikings here. Got my favorite soda here. Proud sponsor of the podcast, Grape Crush.
Yes.
I didn't see any Grape Crush for Aaron at the press conference, so I thought I had to do my part that way. What an exciting preview we were able to have, guys. That was pretty fun watching Deshaun Watson and the Browns give us a shot to control our destiny. And then we had a lot of picks on this show. We had I think we were one of the first call out shows rather than a call in show, which worked for us. And so we got the vibe from Packer Nation, and you two were the only ones to pick the Vikings. I think they needed a little spurring on, and it worked. You got the job done. So I have no criticisms to offer that way. Schmitty, how ecstatic were you watching the game on Sunday there?
That was pretty awesome. That's probably the most fun I've had this season for a Packers football game. It's been a lot of ups and downs this year into basically airplane mode against NFC rival, the North, the team that I don't live too far from and have to deal with their fans on a day in, day out basis that I can't stand. That was a pretty sweet win.
Dad?
I think Schmitty is the one who's maybe popularized the adjective delicious with regard to certain outcomes. That it would be hard pressed to come up with a better term. It's been a while since we had a tastier victory against the purple. I'm always careful to not to gloat too much because the next purple encounter is never that far away, and the tides can turn. But for one Sunday late in the season, and a season that's been seemingly a lost season, hopes are definitely revived. And this is off script a little bit. We talked about script, but it just occurred to me that Zadarius Smith was very conspicuous by his absence in any meaningful plays, other than the fact that I guess at the opening kickoff when the captains went out, he refused to shake any Packer hands. So put that in your pipe and smoke it, Zadarius. We treated you well while you were here, compensated you well. We enjoyed having you here. We would have brought you back if we could. There's a little thing in the NFL called the business side, and it just didn't work out. You didn't have to take it like a crying 2-year-old. So go back in your corner and think about it for a while.
The answer in those situations for any Green Bay Packer players out there is never to go to the Vikings. That is not your solution. It hasn't gone
Hasn't worked well
for many guys there. Speaking of those Vikings across the border here, have they been exposed? Are they who we thought they were? What are they? They're 12-4. They have a good chance of becoming the worst point differential 12-4 team in the history of the NFL. I don't know if they're just bad, if they're sort of bipolar, if they're going to come alive in the postseason. I don't know what to think. Who are the Minnesota Vikings to you, Dad?
Well, I have to go back to the immortal words of the former Viking mentor, Denny Green. The Vikings are who we thought they were. If you want to crown their ass, crown them. But they're not crownable. According to the metrics kept by the NFL for 42 years, this team is predicted to have 7.5 wins. I think about a month ago, I stated on this podcast that I viewed them as a 9-8 or 10-7 type team. Hey, they've had a nice season. Give them credit. I don't want to, they've done some good things late in games, but the things they've done would not appear to me to be sustainable. And now they find themselves in a position where we were for much of the season, playing without a couple of their best linemen, which we did throughout a good share of the season, having two guys coming back from an ACL in and out of the alignment, in and out of the lineup, and unable to perform. So I would not say the stock. I would say this. We've talked a little about it. I think there's a fairly strong case to be made for the fact that as we sit here right now, the Vikings are the third best team in the North Division.
I love it. I love that take. Schmitty, I want to hear your thoughts on that. And also, just as a brief note, the Vikings win in week 18 over the Chicago Bears by 49 points. They will still finish as the worst point differential team to win 13 games in NFL history. 49-point victory for that to happen. So, kind of crazy statistic there to hear about. What do you think about that take, Schmitty? The Vikings being the third best team in the NFC North.
I mean, they lost to the Lions, right, by 9 points, 11
Two,
points,
three
double
weeks ago.
digits, not too long ago. That's been the narrative when they got blown out by the Cowboys, right? That was brought up, the differential in points, how they had the best record with the differential, with the worst differential of all time. And then they win in these miraculous fashions, games that are so entertaining that kind of gets washed over. And then you lose to the Lions, and then you get blown out by the Packers 41-3. And that's the narrative again, is that they have the worst differential. Um, I like them being the third best team in the NFC North. I think there's some truth to that. We have to beat the second best team in the NFC North on Sunday.
Um, looking at how things have shaken out with the Packers here in recent days, obviously or weeks, I should say, we've been hot. We're thinking about potentially, as we talked in the office here today, Dad, that the Packers very well might not be, or would be favored in every game from here on out. I don't know. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We got to go take care of business with the Detroit Lions. But if you look at things, let's imagine for a moment, get ahead of ourselves, that we do beat the Lions and we head into the
You're
playoffs.
really going to do this right now, huh?
Yeah, let's imagine for just a moment. And
Well,
then we head
Graffiti,
You and
into
John
either
Lennon.
we head into San Francisco or we head into Minnesota. Those seem like two of the more likely spots. I think if we head into Minnesota, we have to be favored, right? After what we just saw. If we head into San Francisco, we're playing a third string quarterback. If we win either of those games, I suppose if we went up against the Eagles, I would have to imagine that we're the
Whoa,
underdog.
whoa, 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 whoa. Hold the bus just a second. We're riding pretty high. We're feeling pretty full of ourselves. But we have our hands full this week against a highly motivated Detroit Lions team with a fierce coach who's going to bite off both kneecaps on the way up. And all the goodwill we've created here would come crashing down in a hurry if we do not line up and play well against Detroit. So I'm not going to conjecture other than to say I hear what you're saying.
There we go.
I can go there next week if that's where the trail leads, and I will go there and I will talk on the wavelength that you're talking. But right now, what I like to bring into the conversation is it seems to me like this Packer team has somewhat of a sustainable identity now that's really different from the basis upon which I was making my picks and projections for them, which was often that, can we count on Aaron to get us over the line at the end of the game in a tight game and be the difference maker? And he hasn't had to be the difference maker in this run. He's had to be a manager, play smart, keep us in good plays, not turn the ball over, make a play here or there, and just kind of be a pedestrian type Aaron Rodgers. You could say the team has carried him a little bit I think you got some footage here, do you not, of
Well, I
Brady
just couldn't
throwing?
hold this in any longer.
Oh, okay.
Speaking of delicious, how much better than that does it get? Wow.
Yeah,
So
I wouldn't recommend that, but it turned out fine this week.
we'll switch veins and then get back to your point there, Dad, about the construction of the team. I just want to pose another question to you guys. Um, was that the greatest cornerback performance of all time? I'm trying to think of given the moment, right? There aren't many notable cornerback performances. That's not something that particularly sticks in your mind. Maybe Richard Sherman against Michael Crabtree, mediocre. That kind of resonates largely because of his post game interview. But in terms of going up against the best wide receiver in the NFL, calling him essentially Fluke Jefferson before the game. That's my name for Justin Jefferson is Fluke Jefferson. But saying it was a fluke what he did week 1 against us, and then absolutely backing it up and completely shutting down, demoralizing, and absolutely getting inside the guy's head. You got Justin Jefferson hitting referees with his helmet by the end of the game. You got Viking fans online throwing out conspiracy theories that we were watering the center of the field to shut down the crossing routes. I mean, does it get better than that at the cornerback position there, Schmitty?
To be able to make a comment. Now the media took some stuff out of context. Fluke was said after many minutes of praising how good Justin Jefferson is. So we're taking a bite of the apple and rolling with this too. But yes, to answer your question, that is a very good performance, probably the best of Jair's career. They threw at him. Usually, when you're a really good corner, and Jair's gotten some of this in previous seasons, they don't even look his way. Now, Jair followed Justin Jefferson just a little bit more this game, and let's not say that we didn't, as a defensive plan, try to do a lot of different stuff to help Jair.
Sure,
There
he
was
was
some
getting
double
help,
coverage, some
no doubt.
brackets. So yes, great performance. I would like to say, good job, Joe Barry. How dare I say something like that? Good job, Joe Barry. Good job, number 26. A
Yeah.
pick six. Two guys that we love to bash on this Beta Boys Weekly, ended up showing out for us and maybe will take us to places we never thought imaginable come January.
Well, I think that
So
was a good mea culpa on behalf of all of us, Schmitty. We've all been pretty down on Joe Barry and Darnell Savage, and they both did show up. You got to give them credit. It took Joe a while to figure out that hey, maybe it's a good idea to put your best cornerback on Justin Jefferson. But hey, we did it. We didn't do it week 1. We did it when it counted here at the end. And Darnell Savage, of course, with the huge pick 6. I think that was all fantastic. Dad, I did want to get back to your point about the construction of the team, maybe get Schmidt's thoughts on that as well. In terms of his point being that in past years, you'd look at a lot of Packers teams, Aaron Rodgers would have to drag us across the finish line or try to. And he had a lot of lackluster defensive performances. What we saw against the Vikings here was the exact opposite of that, where you have Keyshawn Nixon housing kickoff returns, you got the defense scoring, and you got the running game being as prolific as it has been. Do you think that, obviously what we saw against the Vikings to that degree isn't sustainable, but do you think that sort of team construction could bode well for us in the postseason, Schmidt?
of course, I mean, if you consider um, how the special teams and the defense is just on an uprise, they're helping in such a significant way that you never thought would be the case. I mean, Keyshawn Nixon has totally taken over uh, for our special teams. We've had great blocks. Guys are knowing their assignment. I mean, that hole that if you have that clip, that kick return for a touchdown. I mean, there wasn't a guy within 7-10 feet of him, and he just blew through. And the only guy that he had to beat was the punter. So if you have performances like that, Aaron Rodgers having 150 yards passing, he might need to show up a little bit more come playoff time. But you got a recipe. If you went beat the Lions, you're 9-8. I mean, that's a 9-8 team. A recipe of do a bunch of little things well You don't need to have an overpowering performance from Aaron Rodgers. I think it can be a winning formula. I mean, think about when we won the Super Bowl, right, 10 years ago. Our secondary, that defense was turned it on at the right time. Just had all the right things going. That might have been the best secondary uh, in the NFL that year, based on just playoff performance. So you want to be hot at the right time, and it appears that's the case for us.
Yeah, we're certainly hot. There's no doubt about that. And if we beat the Lions, the streak continues there. Um, I think you make a good point about Aaron Rodgers only having 150 yards there, Schmitty, or whatever it came out to be, and we're going to need a little bit more from him. Dad, I think you kind of had a similar feeling when you took time to watch the Tampa Bay Buccaneers there, right? You saw maybe a little bit different performance coming from a 45-year-old Tom Brady than we've seen to this point from Aaron Rodgers. What do you have to say on that point there, Dad?
Well, I think you can tell by we got our own hand signals here, like Rogers does, that I'm not hearing Schmitty at all. So I usually get spurred on by his commentary, so I feel a little lackluster here. But um, I would say that other teams are going to look at the identity of our team, and at some point they may have to say we need to bring a safety down and make Rodgers prove it or stop the running game. We cannot allow the Packers to roll in the running game, control the clock, and which is probably a key to victory over Detroit. Detroit has a highly potent offense. And so by controlling the ball and keeping their offense off the field would be a key to victory. And Detroit certainly has to know that. So I think Schmidt's right that the the context of that game would dictate that there may be some opportunities for Rodgers. And maybe this is the kind of a thing where the identity that we've had allows Aaron to regain some of his mojo because of how they're going to start playing us, maybe with freeing up one safety. We've seen Watson get behind the defense multiple times in the last 2 or 3 games. And you can show those 3 balls that Tom Brady dropped into Evans. If I'm not saying that's human that you're going to do that every week, but he dropped those balls in the bucket from 50 yards like you cannot believe. And if Aaron Rodgers had thrown some balls like that to Watson the last 2 or 3 weeks, Watson would have 3 or 4 more touchdowns. So the plays are there to be made, and that's exciting because we're not hitting on all cylinders here yet. And I think you're going to see Watson emerge because it's quite clear he's getting behind the defense every week.
Real quick, Griffey, try to
I
guess
got
how
him.
many yards Aaron Rodgers had when he beat the Eagles in 2010 in the wild card round.
In 2010, so that was against Mike Vick. I can tell you how many he had against Atlanta. I think it was about 333, pretty close to that. I don't know how
32 for
many.
36, 4 touchdowns.
180 yards from that
Wow.
wild
And
card
James
performance. And
Starks,
James Starks had about 150.
yep, 130, something like that.
And then we had the pretty low scoring game against the Bears too, right? Aaron ran one
Look
in.
at those balls that Brady. Can you believe that the way he's dropping those balls in the bucket? Come on, Aaron, you can do that for crying out loud. It's time. It's time to play like Aaron Rodgers. Hit Watson for a few deep balls, and we are going to be a machine.
Well, you had a bit of a hot take there, Dad, but I think it was correct with the Vikings being the best team in the NFC North. Has Jared Goff been the best quarterback in the NFC North?
Certainly statistically, right?
Him and
I
Cousins,
haven't
would be in the
looked.
mix, but
Cousins has yards, but he has like 28 touchdowns and now what, 14? Did he throw 3 interceptions against us? He's like 28 and 14.
Yeah, tied for the most
Um,
picks in the league.
yeah.
mhm.
And Jared
That's
Goff
one thing
has
that's not going to be sustainable for us, guys. We're not going to get 3 interceptions this week and a fourth turnover and a kickoff return. It's kind of funny. You almost look at the special teams and defense against Miami. They returned a kick 93 yards, and we had an interception return to the inside the 10. And this week, the boys said, "Okay, if they're not going to punch it in, we'll just take it all the way." Keyshawn will go all the way for the touchdown, and Savage says we'll take it all the way in for the touchdown if our offense isn't going to punch it in. But I don't think we can count on that this week.
No, I don't think it's something we can count on, but I'd love to see it. Maybe we can get one more in the postseason. That would sure be great. Um, Looking ahead just a little bit towards the Lions here, they shifted the game to the night game, Schmitty. So we will know, or at least the Lions will know, whether or not they have a chance to get into the playoffs based upon the outcome of the Seattle game. You have to think Seattle likely finds a way to get it done, but who wouldn't mind the Lions having a little bit less motivation if that goes our way? Um, One way or the other, I think the Lions, given their lack of success in recent years, would still get quite a bit of joy in the opportunity to play spoiler against Aaron Rodgers, right? That's probably enough motivation that you need right there. Um, but what do you think are going to be the big keys for us this week? And how does this matchup maybe unfold differently or in just a slightly different fashion than we saw against the Vikings last week, even if it may result in a chance for us to get another W?
I mean, as Gar said, you're not expecting to get that many turnovers. You'll be
Yeah.
lucky to get one. The Packers have now extended that streak to 10 straight games of getting a turnover. Fantastic work. Um, but the Packers the last 3 weeks are first in time of possession, and that's I think going to be a really key thing going into Sunday night. It would be very nice. The Seahawks are 6.5, 7 point favorites against the Rams to take care of them, completely eliminate the Lions. Maybe there is a little angle there where the Lions maybe sit a guy or a guy gets hurt, and rather than risk continued injury, he lays it down for the rest of the evening. Maybe there's some scenarios like that, but certainly the Lions are going to get their jollies off by being spoiler if that were to be the case, and they don't have a way into the playoffs. Um, it really is that possession game. You're you're going to want to see AJ Dillon run the ball. You're going to want to see number 33 get his touches. Please, a lot of touches for Aaron Jones. I know he's been banged up, but beating the Vikings the way we did, we were able to give him much more of a breather than we thought we were going to.
And
Um,
he was efficient. He still had a good game with,
he had over
limited
100
touches.
yards. I mean, so again, the Packers are ascending. We didn't think we thought we were playing. You guys wanted to talk about Jordan Love at this time of the year, and I wanted to spank you both, put both you over my lap, spank you.
Come on board the love boat, Schmitty.
The goat, number
Come
12, took care of us.
on.
No,
The
it's my.
goat.
You guys listen up. I told you that he would take care of us. He
Well,
would be the guy,
let's
and you
talk
guys
about
wanted nothing to do with it. Jordan Love talk out of you two, and yet here we are, a winning in and an ascending Packers team. Shame on both of you.
let's talk about that in a little bit. I want to get let's maybe do our projections or predictions rather on this Lions game, and then I would like to chat a little bit more about number 12 there. Schmitty, what's the line? Who are you going with in this one?
The Packers are 4.5 point favorites. It hasn't moved off that the entire week. I would assume that as we get closer to kickoff, it might move to 5.5 if the sharp money starts coming in. I wouldn't dare ever take the Lions here. Shame on either of you if you do take them.
You took the
The Packers,
Vikings.
yeah, that was good for us. It worked out
Would it be
well,
good
very
for us
well.
to take the Lions?
No, because it won't happen. The Packers will win this game. They're going to win by 9, and let's get some wild card magic rolling.
Dad, what are your thoughts on the matchup?
Well, we've talked a little bit about this. I didn't want any credit at all last week. You don't have to give me any bouquets or accolades or anything, but I think the word got out to Aaron that I picked against them, and I think that's put the chip on his shoulder, and so we got the job done. But you can't rely on that kind of skullduggery, chicanery, that
I
kind
think
of
that's pretty
ethereal
heroic of you.
mist. I know. I sacrificed the record. I'm happy to do it. It's kind of like Schmitty hasn't heard this story, but when I was coaching you and traveling basketball, we had a ball game where we'd been beat by a team before, and they were playing that zone defense, and and I knew you were going to get some 3-point shots in the second half. And I walked down to the bench at the beginning of the second half, and I said, Griff, if you hit your 3-pointers this half, we're going to win. And you hit 4 out of 5, and we won going away. And later in the season, there was an occasion when I almost thought about going down there and saying the same thing. And I thought, nope, leave well enough alone. So, yes, I agree with Schmidt. We are an ascending team. There's a lot to be said for momentum. There's a lot to be said for complementary football where you all three phases trust and believe in one another. I think we have reached that kind of a point. It would just be an awful shame if we don't get it done. So I'm not overconfident or anything like that, but I just think the Packers are the play here. I would look for them something along the Detroit's going to score some points, so something like 31-27, with maybe Detroit getting the. I'll be our buddy Derek and say Detroit gets a late touchdown to make it look a little closer than it is.
He was right on with that with the Vikings. I
He
mean,
was
not as much of
hot
a
take.
blowout as we saw, but yeah. Um, I feel like, am I gonna screw things up if I give us the clean sweep here? Is that gonna be a jinx for the Packers? Is that gonna be good? I
If
don't
they
know.
can't get it done at this point on their own, they can't get it done.
Yeah,
It's
that's
yeah,
fair enough. I was gonna go ahead and pick the Lions here, but you just convinced me to go the other way for nothing other than
they got
your
to get it done.
they got to get it done. If they do get it done, well, let me give you a number first. From what we've seen out of Aaron Rodgers, unless we get a lot of defensive and special teams touchdowns, I don't think we put up a ton of points. I think the defense is going to have to step up again, which is tough against this Detroit Lions team. But I think 27-24, if we get some fortuitous bounces, we could put up that many points. I think it's going to be a close one. I think the Lions give us everything they can, and we still get it done. So that's the hope. That's the wish. Now, if that does happen, juxtaposed to if it doesn't, what are some potential futures you see for Aaron Rodgers? It seems like right now he has to be much more likely to be coming back than at any point, unless we were to somehow go all the way and he rides off into the sunset. But let's break down a few of the scenarios, because this has shifted about 10 to 15 times in the last 2 years here and what the future might hold. Where do you see things now, Dad?
Well, I think I'm going to really get Schmitty going here because we had a little talk about this in the office today. It's amazing how our emotions are going to ride on this game, because if we get this done and are heading into the playoffs, we're not just heading into the playoffs, but we are a formidable team in the playoffs. And I'm not going to say we're going to go to San Francisco and win the game for sure, or be favored certainly, but we have some unfinished business there. Um, we'd be playing a third string quarterback. Schmidt wants, the GOAT, the greatest of all times, setting aside uh, our buddy over there in Tampa Bay. Going against third string quarterback with a well balanced team, you certainly would have to like the chances. Then you ask yourself, how much farther are you going to go than that? I can't even think beyond that, but it sure would be delicious again to be able to take care of some unfinished business there. And then you have to ask, if you don't win the Super Bowl, you now have a quarterback who is highly marketable to two organizations, and you probably could parlay two number one draft picks out of San Francisco or Las Vegas with a team that has three balanced as aspects to their team going: special teams, defense, and offense, and a young rising quarterback and all kinds of salary cap space. And it makes the mind wander as to what would happen. We probably shouldn't do that this year because we should just ride Rodgers all the way. But these are the facts, and I'll let Schmitty pick it up from there. Don't try not to get too carried away, Schmitty.
Well, I think you make a good point there, Dad. I've said all year and the last couple of years even, that I thought Aaron Rodgers didn't have much trade value. However, if he brings us back 5 in a row, we win a playoff game, I think there might be some value there. And if we don't seize it, we're making a grave mistake. That's my take. Schmitty?
I want to bust through the screen and wring Gar's neck.
What, just
Why?
mine?
Both of you, all year.
I think he
all
expects
year, we
it
have
out
to
of
deal
me.
with
He's
this.
grown to expect this from me.
That's better, Schmitty. Come on, get it
This
out.
has this run, as has happened in the past. This run that we are on has reinvigorated it has reinvigorated even the fan. It should reinvigorate you guys into believing that we would want Aaron Rodgers back. The salary cap situation and what it means next year, it's a lot of money to be moving around that another team would have to take on. I don't know if it happens. And for that reason alone, I think Aaron comes back just one more season.
How much has Aaron contributed to this run, do you think?
His leadership abilities, Griffey, you can't put a price tag on that. You can't put a price tag. You in Nick Larson's basement, the wood paneling of his parents' house, when you were all gleeful, jumping around, confetti falling from the sky. You had Clay Matthews and Aaron Rodgers, that still photo. He has the Undertaker belt on. That happiness that you felt, that carries 10, 12 years later. So whatever he wants to do, however long he wants to play, whatever he decides, for as long as he wants to wear number 12 for the green and gold, he should be allowed. He should be given that right, and no one should take that away from him. And I think because of this moment in time, these 5 games that we've won, and we're about to go into the playoffs if we beat the Lions, I think he would want to come back. I think as soon as this season ends, he's going to tell them, please, I want to do this one more time. And they're not going to deny that right from him. And no one should. And no one should go boo-hoo. And we should follow up next season after it's all said and done, which will be the last of his career. And then we get to watch Mr. Love take over with a team that's pretty young, that has a lot of pieces. We won't be in a rebuild after Aaron Rodgers is gone. We've seen enough good things from number 10 that I think we actually can play some good ball going forward once Aaron leaves. But we give Aaron the next season because that's the right thing to do, and he deserves it.
I think that's likely to happen. I think Schmitty is back to being the voice of
Probably.
the reason. Schmitty, if we make the playoffs here after one more victory, I think I better play that Super Bowl clip that you alluded to on air here. That'd be a little good mojo for us getting into the playoffs next week. If we're able to all get together and talk about a playoff matchup, that would be great, right? This could be, despite all that, Aaron Rodgers' last time suiting up in Lambeau Field. So let's enjoy this. Let's enjoy the fact that we essentially have a playoff game, and we'll see where things lie next week. And potentially get together here for a preview on Sunday. We'll see if the stars align for that. But
Papa.
Thanks for joining us here. Yeah, see what Papa's up to. And
Let's do it.
any closing words
Hey,
for us here, Dad?
I almost hate to do this, but we won't take it any further than this thought experiment. If you could get Devontae Adams back right now, and you'd have to give back Quay Walker and Christian Watson, would you do it? Just let's all think about that till our next podcast. And it may have some informative aspects thinking about other players and their trade value in the future. But right now, let's just ride the wave, baby.
That's a good one to ponder. That's a good one to
All
ponder.
right.
All
Give
right.
you
Take
something to
care,
ponder.
guys.
Love you guys.
Good
Go
night,
Pack.
all. And his father shoveled horse shit all the days. When the lad was very young, they found a diamond in the dung, and they sent him off to college just to play. Hail, hail, hail to Master Beta, lift your thunder mugs on high, and we'll drink another glass to the biggest horse's ass in the brotherhood of Beta Theta Chi. Go Beta boys!